Yeah, what do you think we are, some country bumpkin?
Hey, now cut that out there, Mr. Bumpkin. We're supposed to have a shed being delivered as we speak that was supposed to be starting to be installed. 5 minutes before I connected, they called, said that the driver was on his way to getting my materials, and he got into a little fender bender. So now they just called me back to reschedule, and that's why I disappeared for a few minutes. So anyway, yeah. So rush, wait. Rush, wait. So anyway, all right. Do we have Jim on the phone there, Mr. JPEG?
Yes.
All right, good. All right. Can we bring him in to test him to make sure it's working?
That's what we've been doing, waiting for you.
All right, here I am. Let's test it before we go.
Jim, let Aaron know that you're here.
Aaron,
Okay, I hear him. A lot of feedback, though. A lot of, almost as if he's up right on top of the phone. I got to have him back off. Jim, can you hear me, Jim?
He's got a really bad connection.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim, your connection is really, really bad, very staticky. So it's really kind of hard to hear. Maybe if you can hang up and maybe find a better point in your house that's a little clearer and dial back in.
I can try that.
Okay, yeah, please do that, all right? And then we're going to get ready to start as soon as you dial back in.
Okay.
All right, so here's the thing. Even though it's Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, so I know John probably has a high-test coffee up there for John and Frank there. We have to pretend it's Saturday, and I have to pretend not to talk about Saturday because it's not Saturday Live. And I'm not going to give out the phone number, obviously, because Jim is going to be on the line. He's going to tie it up anyway, but no sense in me asking for callers why we are recorded for Saturday. So this will go up live Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time as that. So once you guys see it, feel free to reshare it and go from there. So primarily today's conversation is going to be really about enforcing the fact that here we are 23 years later from 9/11 and how the heightened patriotism was so high at the beginning, but then how really every year seems to wane off until we get to September 11th. And then September 12th hits and we seem to forget everything. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, obviously, Chesapeake's event coming up. We have this flyer up for that. I found some information, some interesting facts that people may not be aware of about the event post-event. I'm trying to stay away from any information that's political in nature, why the reasons of the attacks and all of that. I just want this show to be a platform for us to never forget that old saying, okay? Jim, are you there, sir?
I'm here, but I'm not too much clear.
Okay, you're actually a little bit clearer. So John will have to do his magic there. When you're not speaking, we're going to have to turn you off. But when I direct a question to you, John will have to then bring your volume back up so we hear your response, okay?
Can you hear me any better?
For some reason, he's got some feedback going on.
He may have the volume too. He may have the volume too high because it's not like there's any audio feedback. There's nothing for him to connect to.
Let me.
Jim, turn your volume down on your phone just a little bit.
How about that?
Are you near any other electrical equipment?
Well, I mean, I got. Let me walk around the house.
He sounds like he's playing an accordion.
Yeah. And walking around your house, talk to us so we can hear.
How about now?
Nope.
Still getting that feedback, that metallic background, that metallic feedback.
I mean, I can't get.
Does he live in Area 51? What was
That would be closer
I can't
to
get any equipment or anything like that.
Jim, is there any way you could try to connect with your phone, the email to the studio via your phone rather than your computer for some reason? Can you try that?
Well, I'm actually talking to the phone now.
No, I know that. But what I'm saying is hang up the phone, go to your email on your phone, click the link that John sent you, and let's use your phone as the video device.
Okay, I'll give it a try.
And if not, just call back in and we'll make it work. In the meantime, John, we'll get started while he's trying to do that. All right.
All right.
All right. So just usually, guys, the opening segment, I just kind of talk about some odds and ends stuff about Virginia Beach area, what's happening in Vegas before we get into the meat and potatoes of the topic. So, and I'll introduce everybody. All right, John, let's hit it.
Here we go. We got a 3, 2.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Aaron's Hour with Aaron Phillips. That's right, that's me coming to you, well, sort of live. We're live today. Why? Because it is September. Fall is unofficially upon us. I've got good friends with me on today's show, and you all are making time for me to be with you and spend time with me on a Saturday. I appreciate it. If you're watching us on Facebook, as always, Facebook, Aaron's Hour Show is the Facebook page. WWDB TV Las Vegas is the WWDB TV Facebook page. Hey, you like YouTube? That's okay. We dig it. You can go to the Aaron's Hour Show and WWDB TV YouTube channel. And of course, in a couple of days, if you have Roku, that wonderful streaming service, you should. If you don't, you really should anyway, because then you can download the WWDB TV network and get all the plethora, the word of the day is plethora, of shows, not only of Aaron's Hour, but of course, all the plentiful and plethora of shows that are available here on the WWDB TV network. That's right. Today's show, as you see joining me, and we have another guest coming in to let's see if I can do this. This is why I was never a weatherman. I have to do this. So here, this way on the screen, this way, coming from Vegas, the WWDB TV studios, dear friend of mine, gentleman we've talked a lot about on the air with and all around town, Mr. Frank Pizzaro. He is the founder. He is the muckety-muck, the high chief, firefighter memorial transport.org, former New York City firefighter, as he was down at September 11th, military, and a little side note, folks, frontman for the Platters for 10 years. That's right, the Platters, not a tribute band, but the Platters. Mr. Frank, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. I'm glad to be here.
That's so good to have you on. Joining us here at the bottom, kind of like the Paul Lynn square of the show, gentleman there. Mr. Richard Pippin, he is a Kiwanis International trustee for the Capital District out here, longtime Kiwanian, or soon, no more. Your title's almost gone, isn't it, Rich?
Actually, Aaron, it's the Capital District trustee, not international.
Oh, Capital District. I apologize. So many acronyms in Kiwanis, you get all tied up all over the place. Bottom line is, he's a big shot with us here within Kiwanis, but he's also a member of the Kiwanis Club of Chesapeake, which I too am a member of. Jim Horn is the other guest we're trying to get connected either via phone or video. He's sort of like the marketing coordinator that I've been working with to spread the news about the September 11th Remembrance Service in Chesapeake coming up next week. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The reason for today's show, ladies and gentlemen, is quite frankly this. We all know where we were 23 years ago when everything happened in the span of, 12 minutes or almost 30 minutes, two towers that had stood the test of time, withstood a bombing in 1993 and really would made up a huge part of the New York City skyline, was taken out. And we're not going to get into the political reasons. That's not why we're doing the show. The folks that you see are on your screen, and Jim to come in and JPEG there in the studio, when all this went down, we all felt the sense of sadness and, my God, the worst incident on domestic soil since Pearl Harbor and all those things. And for a year or two or three after the event, ladies and gentlemen, you saw red, white, and blue everywhere. Right, guys? Would you agree to that?
That's
Absolutely.
Right. Flags were out. Everything was. And then all of a sudden, something happened. Listen, society changes. We get that. Things happen in everyday lives. We had 2008, the economic crash. We had COVID a couple of years ago, which shut everything down. And we seem to have lost a sense of, I don't say purpose, but we've lost a sense of patriotism. We've lost a sense of who we are as a nation, as a country, because there are too many things around the world and in our own country that are dividing us. Something like September 11th brought us together 23 years ago in the worst possible way because of what happened. But yet the amount of patriotism, the red, white, and blue flying on cars and tags, and we will never forget, and not a political statement here, but to see George W. Bush standing on top of that heap talking to the first responders and everybody there. And then, of course, as a baseball fan, watching him throw out what was probably the best ever ceremonial first pitch during a World Series right down the middle of the plate. Did not want to put on a bulletproof vest because he was afraid it was going to inhibit his throw, because he did play ball for Yale back in the day, plus was a co-owner of the Rangers. But we've lost something. We've lost something in this country, and I think to a certain extent, I think it's a sense of purpose. Call it patriotism, whatever you want. But September 11th, we all get that feeling again. But now how do we sustain that? How do we get the sense of purpose as a country that's united for a common cause and a common direction, even though we all may believe different things, and that's okay. That's what this country's all about. But gentlemen, I ask you, Frank, you were down there. To this day, still, you were a firefighter a long time. You were there on the front lines. You were there, recovery and everything. You still have many effects because of that. And we'll get into some of that down the line. You, above all, you carried the American flag for us that day, so to speak, by representing us and doing what you could to find survivors and try to get us back to normalcy. Give us your feeling about where the state of the country is, even remembering September 11th after all of that devastation.
I mean, you made a good point. It's usually when something major happens here that we remember that we're the United States of America, and we do have short memories, and we also are affected by whatever's near us and whatever affects us directly. And I think we need to get back to remembering that as one country, anything that affects any particular part of the country affects us all. And so I think that's where we need to refocus, especially in this time of great division.
Yep.
Remember, it's not about winning or losing. It's about what's good for all of us.
Pip, what's your thought on that?
A test of time, I think, has been one of our real downfalls in remembering. We need to educate our children more, because us old guys were there, we saw it, and unfortunately, it takes something drastic to bring us together, it seems. That's an unfortunate circumstances in our country. If something like this happens, we seem to pull together, but over time, we sort of, we take for granted what we have and the freedoms we have. But the children, I think, are not being educated as to some of these things. They taken a lot of history out of classes, and the parents, even the parents of the younger group now that weren't here in 2001. But right. I think those are the issues that are keeping that we're slowly losing that never forget attitude.
Right. One of the things that I tried to do, I've kind of tapered the show name from Aaron's Hour with Aaron Phillips to Aaron's Hour with Aaron Phillips, Coast to Coast. And I'm so glad, because now here, I'm here in Virginia Beach. Rich is in Virginia Beach, Chesapeake. I've got Frank out now in Vegas, and I think Jim Horn now is on the line with us. We'll get to him in a second, because we're really talking about something that has to be a coast to coast, east, west, north, south thing that we continue to carry. Recently, I was in New York City. I was down at the World Trade Center. And what I found interesting is, how melancholy that whole area feels, of course, but the different countries. I read a stat this morning, 115 countries around the world lost at least one representative from their country, whether it was the day of the attacks or the aftermath due to health reasons. And you heard it was like the United Nations walking around the World Trade Center memorial pools there, because it affected everybody. And I think I don't want to keep sounding like we're beating a dead horse here and saying the same thing over and over, but patriotism and the feeling of we shall never forget, I think, is creeping in a little too much. On the phone with us, let me go to Jim Horn. Jim Horn, also a member of the Chesapeake Kiwanis Club, and Jim and I have kind of been working on, we'll just say PR, and getting the word out about what Chesapeake is doing next week on the 11th. We'll get to that in a bit. Jim, we were just kind of talking about the sense of we should never forget. It was around us the first couple of years, no matter where you went, we all bled red, white, and blue. But now we'll just say complacency for the sake of a different description. What's your feeling on where the country stands and where we should be in remembering the events of September 11th, Jim?
Well, okay, first of all, can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Okay. Aaron, I'm glad that you've come on board with this, because to me, I'm a retired military man, and one of the things that I'm noticing over the past few years is the lack of attendance to these memorial ceremonies. And it just, to me, it kind of breaks my heart that people are starting to forget what the first responders and just the civilians, policemen, firemen, and everybody had to endure that day, and doing everything they could to help people, and in the process losing over 3,000 lives, and there's like 6,000 people that are still living with effects of being in the area. And I just think it's kind of sad that our country can't take a few moments and express their thanks for what these people did.
And I'm so glad you said that. You know, I was not around at the time that Pearl Harbor, you know, was bombed, and that was well before my time. World Trade Center casualty, from what I read, and gentlemen, please correct me if I'm wrong, because, you know, Frank, you were there and you guys probably know more than me anyway, that the amount of lives lost on September 11th actually superseded the lives lost at Pearl Harbor. Is that correct? Is that a correct number?
That is correct.
So here we are, September 11th, the worst domestic act of terrorism that costs the most amount of lives. And yet I think more people at times will tend to talk about Pearl Harbor and what happened and Hawaii and all that devastation before they bring up 9/11. And I'm not saying one is, I mean, they're both the same in terms of devastation in my mind. I lived this one. I grew up with the World Trade Center towers as part of the skyline right across the river from where I grew up. Frank, also being a New Yorker, same thing. This was our backyard. And to see the devastation and to go back there a couple of weeks ago is just nuts. And Pip, you bring up something interesting about history, because when I work in the schools, and I'm in an elementary school, so perhaps the curriculum is a little different there than in high school where we learn history, but they call it now social studies. And I don't know that history is being taught the way it was when I was in school, when you fellows were all in school. So I wish, I agree with you. I'd love to know what they would teach in history about what happened on September 11th.
You know, that's a good question, but you know, the schools have, because of various reasons, have blocked some of the things in our history. I mean, they're still part of our history, no matter whether
Sure.
we like that part of the history or not.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets to our wars, unfortunately, you know, we were furious when we were attacked. That's the first time, like you said, since Pearl Harbor, that we have been attacked on our homeland, and that brought us together. But
Right.
how we communicate that to our younger people and our parents of the younger people who weren't even there at this point, it is difficult. But yeah, the schools need to do a better job, in my opinion,
Right.
of teaching history to all levels of our children, so they know what happened, whether it was good history for them or bad history for them.
Right.
They
History
just need
is
to bring
history.
it back to our classroom.
Right. Yeah. History is history, whether it's good history, bad history. History is history, and we need to do better from there. I remember that morning coming down the steps from my upstairs, getting ready to get started for the day. And usually I turn on ESPN because I'd rather watch sports highlights and sports news. I'll go to my local channel. I'll watch the little byline crawl on the bottom for local news one time. That's all I need to hear. But of course, that morning, all the news channels, and I had just missed seeing the first plane hit the first tower. And I remember the news reporter, because at this point, it wasn't even local TV. It was all the national channels covering it, that they were saying, not sure if the pilot maybe had a heart attack or something like that, causing him to collide. And then I'm yelling up to my wife, "Hey, babe, you know, we better get out, turn this. Yeah, this just happened." And then within seconds, I turn around, and then now we see the second plane hit, and I was frozen. And now there was silence by the reporters because they didn't know what to say, you know, when that second plane hit. And it affects us. There are moments in life where we know where we were in history. When the shuttle blew up, I know where I was. this event happen. Everybody can go back to the wars. Look, this is the biggest devastation since Pearl Harbor, but let's not forget the World Trade Center was bombed in 1993, which at that time was designed to try to take out both towers as well. And also, of course, the Oklahoma City bombing, where the federal building down there was destroyed. But this one is the biggest impact on domestic soil. All right, what I'd like to do is this. I want to step aside for our first break. I do have to pay a couple of bills. When we come back, I want to get Frank's take. He was there. What was it like? I've got some interesting information that I'm just going to share about some interesting tidbits of facts. We'll talk about perhaps what Vegas is doing. Frank is usually out and about town on 9/11, providing his great voice to participate in some of the services, to sing. We have something going on with the Kiwanis Club at Chesapeake next week, which we'll talk about. And by the way, as you folks are watching this, I'd love to see your comments in the chat room. What events do you have going on in your area for September 11th for Remembrance? You're watching Aaron's Hour with Aaron Phillips, coast to coast. I've got Frank, I got Pip, I got Jim, and yeah, I have to claim Styles because nobody else will. We'll be right back.
Are you feeling overwhelmed or stressed? Remember to take a moment for your mental health. At the Mental Health Moment, we believe in the power of self-care and community support. Our mission is to encourage and empower individuals across generations to prioritize their mental well-being. Our program called CARE takes you through community, awareness, resources, and education so we can support you every step of the way. Join us at the Mental Health Moment. Visit our website or follow us on social media because your mental health matters. Remember, take a moment for your mental health.
Are you looking for someone to provide training to your staff? Do you need a motivational speaker about how to handle change? Do you have an upcoming event that needs an MC to handle those responsibilities? Well, look no further than longtime Las Vegas radio personality Aaron Phillips. I am local to Las Vegas and I can blend my talents with any audience. For more information, please visit www.aaronphillipsvoice.com and book me for your next event or training needs.
All right, welcome back to Aaron's Hour. Just a couple of pieces of information as we come back before we get back into conversation. I saw this in the news, y'all. You know, I don't, Richard, how many years have you been married now?
39.
39. Frank?
Ooh, 7.5.
7.5. Jim, how many years are you married?
To my current wife, 7 years.
Okay. I was wondering if somebody was going to qualify an answer. I just want to say that. I've got 36 coming up in January. Why do I bring this up? Because I want to give a special Aaron's Hour shout out to a couple celebrated 70 years of marriage. That's right. They celebrated. Let's send a congratulations to Sam Edge and Rosa Bird. They began their journey together in 1954 at St. Paul's High School in North Carolina. Sam joined the Navy and Rosa joined him in California after she graduated from high school a year later. They actually recently renewed their vows, which is pretty cool. Let's see. Rosa was a hairdresser for 30 years, and then she worked for the Virginia Beach school system for 16 more. They've been in Virginia Beach since 1985. Congratulations, you guys. 70 years. And supposedly, they never had a fight. Also, too, a quick, let's welcome back and say, and this is timing because it's armed forces, the USS Laboon returned after a 9-month deployment back here to Norfolk. They were overseas taking care of some business, protecting our shoreline. So welcome back to Norfolk 2. Where are you? Where I have all the numbers here somewhere. Honestly, I did. All right, I lost it, but some 230 officers and seamen were on board. So welcome back and welcome home after 9 months away. Okay. So, folks, if you're just tuning in, 9/11 is a couple of days away. We want to know what's going on in your neck of the woods. John, if you'd please put the flyer up. Next, this upcoming Wednesday, the 11th, if you are within the sounds of my voice here in Norfolk, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, Suffolk, Portsmouth, if you're vacationing in the area and want to come out, Wednesday, September 11th, 8:30 a.m. at the Chesapeake City Park in Chesapeake. You can go to cityofchesapeake.net. and you can check out the information. The ceremony will begin at about 8:30. We'll have color guards, speakers will be there. The Kiwanis Club at Chesapeake will be there with their great smiling grins on, handing out bottles of water. Also, commemorative bookmark, and of course, a business card showing where we meet because, hey, you can never have enough new members in an organization. So mark your calendars. Come on down. September 11th, 8:30. The ceremony starts. Chesapeake City Park in Chesapeake. For more information, you can always go to the Kiwanis Club of Chesapeake on Facebook. You can message me through my Facebook page for more information. Thank you, John. Let's take that down. All right. So, and again, I hope I've been sharing this thing for weeks now, and hopefully we'll have a great turn. I know we will. All right, Frank, let's talk about Las Vegas as long as we're talking about events. What's happening in Vegas? Or I'm sure you got to be doing something that morning, as you always do. What's happening there to commemorate 9/11?
I do the annual National Anthem 9/11 event over at Station 5 over here in Las Vegas with Las Vegas Fire and Rescue. That location has a piece of the World Trade Center steel, and they do the ringing of the bell at the same time that the first tower came down. And that's our annual event. And then I got to get on a plane and head over to New York. I got an event over there on the 12th. So it's going to be a busy anniversary this year.
You go when you do that. You dress in your fireman blues, don't you? When you do that stuff.
That is
right?
correct, sir.
That's right. See, I know. See, I know this. He doesn't realize how much I know and remember about him. You know what I'm saying? Is your wife going with you on these trips back east?
Absolutely. There's no
All right,
trips without her.
When you coming to Virginia Beach, you Huckleberry?
Come again?
When are you coming to Virginia Beach, you Huckleberry?
When am I coming to Virginia Beach? Not soon enough.
Okay. Fair enough. Just pick up the phone and say, hey, we're coming. You know I got space for you.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's happening in Vegas and New York. So now, Pip, we just talked about the one that's happening here. What do you know of any other events happening in our geographical area for 9/11 remembrance other than, of course, Chesapeake, which is the foremost one because that's us. But
Aaron, I do not actually.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the other cities are holding a 9/11 memorial or not.
Okay. Jim, do you know of any other municipalities around that may be doing something?
I'm not familiar with any one particular one. We've been spending so much time trying to get more people to participate in the one in Chesapeake that I haven't really did any research on what other cities are doing anything.
Right. Okay. I was just curious. I mean, obviously, the one that we want to focus on is the local one, and that's what we're doing next Wednesday, 8:30, Chesapeake City Park. The Kiwanis Club of Chesapeake will be out there manning a table with some waters. Hopefully, the weather will be good, not like you guys in Vegas. But so come on out. What the ceremony will take? What, about a half an hour, guys? Is what I've heard. About maybe 30 minutes.
Maybe 30 minutes. There are also two others, Aaron, out here in Vegas at 9:00 at the Solera community. They have a first responder veterans club. They do a 9/11 event, and then at night the Fremont Street 9/11 parade will be happening.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. I was unaware of those other ones happening. All right, now. John, God bless his soul. He kind of jumped the shark on me, and I was waiting to do this. But with Frank's involvement and all those lives that were lost that day, Frank started just a little teeny weeny organization that I am so full of support for to help move this thing along. And he's wearing it on his hat there. Firefightermemorialtransport.org. I'm glad Rich and Jim are on with us because this is something that you gentlemen must be aware of, especially given the real job that our current president has as the fire chief in the area, Mr. Witt. So, Frank, take a few minutes to talk about Firefighter Memorial Transport and how this started in your mind.
Well, being a survivor of 9/11 and serving in Iraq the first time we went, I retired from the New York City Fire Department because of 9/11 related illnesses. And I came out here and was trying to find a way to continue serving. So I started Firefighter Memorial Transport. And basically, it's a ceremonial unit. And what we do is we cater to fallen heroes and their families and the surrounding community. So what we do is we have special vehicles that are set up for veterans and police and fire. And we have a mobile command center. And what we do is we carry the remains of fallen heroes in their flag draped caskets. And we also provide services to their families. We give scholarships to their kids. we help financially with their arrangements. We also do for the community. We do food drives and coat drives, and we do outreach for the local community. And we work strictly on a donation basis. And we're also always open to any donations and any participation with like-minded organizations to serve those who served, because they deserve that honor. You know, it's nice when somebody is a veteran and you say thank you for your service, or a first responder, and you should always do that. But there's so much more that they need, and we can never forget that. You know, in memory of 9/11, you know, to remember never to forget, because once we forget, that's when things start to go south. And so we always have to keep them in mind and their families.
Absolutely. I was privileged to see it in action. The very first caisson, as they're called, the fire truck was donated from a New Jersey fire department, a beach one, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, Frank, if I remember?
Yes, sir.
You also have a military one now. You have police. So, but the reason, Pip and Jim, that I'm glad that Frank is sharing this, because this is something. Yes, it's getting its roots in Vegas, but this is something Frank is planning on doing nationally. So when we have a situation, police, fire, EMT, servicemen, or whatever, Frank's organization wants to be able to provide this service all across the country. So I think it is going to be very important, and with your support, and I don't mean to digress away from 9/11, but this organization started because of 9/11, that I think we need to get WIT and the powers that be from the fire and police and everything. We need to give Frank an audience with these people, and we as a club, Kiwanis, I'm not turning this into Kiwanis Connects, but we here can be a forefront major support for Frank in breaking into the East Coast, in our Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake area, given who our president is, and let's get them in touch, and let's provide this service to all of our fallen heroes, and let them go out the way they should, being honored within their first responder or military position. So how's that sound?
That sounds amazing.
Sounds great.
I would love to have Frank, your contact information, actually, if you would send it to me. I would appreciate that.
I surely will.
The organization is firefightermemorialtransport.org. All the information you want is on there, as well as the fact, which is really pretty cool, but if you scroll down on the home landing page, there's a great little green button that says donate now. And since it is a nonprofit, it is tax deductible. Correct, Frank?
Absolutely.
Well, I know the long-term plans and whatnot, but we'll save that for another day with these guys. But right now it's about honoring our fallen heroes in our country. So, all right, let's do this. Before we paint a picture of that day, Frank and guys, I want to share some information that appeared on the internet that I found. And this was all supposedly fact-checked. So take it for what it's worth. When you read this stuff on the internet, and it says the article was written by Abraham Lincoln, just kind of take it with a grain of salt. You know what I'm saying? But I'll put it out there. We'll go from there. So the first thing that I think was interesting, it was estimated that the attack caused a minimum of $10 billion in infrastructure and property damage, and the cost of the cleanup was in excess of $750 million. I mean, those are some huge numbers, and yet the cost for this attack to happen was only about $500,000 by these terrorists. So, you know what, Frank, where were you when you got the call to go down to the World Trade Center? What was your first reaction? Take us back to that moment when the alarms are going off, and what you were thinking. Well,
Initially, I woke up to screams in the living room. I was not scheduled. I had switched a tour with somebody. And I came and they showed the first plane hitting the towers. And my first reaction was, wow, that's an awful accident. And then while I'm watching, I see the second plane hit, and I said, that was no accident. So I got myself dressed, and along with about 25 other guys, we all showed up to the firehouse. At that point, both rigs had already gone. And in New York, it gets a little cold in the wintertime. So we have a box truck that's set up to be a thawing unit. And we use that to defrost the hydrants so we could use them. So we all jumped in that with our gear, and we headed down the West Side Highway, which usually takes half an hour, 45 minutes in morning traffic. We got down there in 5 minutes
Wow.
from the firehouse, and we geared up and we went down there. And I remember as we were walking towards the towers, I told one of the guys, there's going to be a lot of guys are going to die today. And I don't know what led me to say it, but I just felt it. I got a chill.
Mm-hmm.
And as we arrived at the base of the World Trade Center, the first one began to drop. And we found ourselves running into a parking structure. We waited that first fallout. We came out. It was so surreal. It looked like a war zone. And while operating, looking for survivors, the second building came down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was down there at least 5 or 6 months after that, digging, taking shifts, no sleep. And it was an amazing thing that even that had honor in it, because as bodies were found, say for a particular firehouse or police department, all work would stop, and that unit would get called, and they would send guys out and have them to carry their fallen.
Wow.
From the site. So these are the images I see. I see people jumping from the buildings. I see guys covered head to toe in white dust.
Right.
I see the blood and the tears, and it's something. I served in war, but this was worse. We don't feel it until it happens directly to us.
Right.
And I think, unfortunately, it takes that kind of thing for us to get together. And sometimes, as a nation, we need a little shakeup. It's unfortunate that there's casualties, but I would do that job all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that we need to remember those kind of things. We're very divided, and sometimes these things are used politically, and they should.
Right. Right.
We've gotten so far away from the truth, and we talked about history,
Right.
and how we don't teach history because it doesn't serve our team or our opinion.
Right.
And so we really have to get away from that, because at the end of the day, we're the strongest nation in the world, and sometimes we forget that.
Let me cut in there with a couple of things. There was the last person, some 20 people were pulled out of the rubble afterwards. The last person that was pulled out lasted 27 hours before she was rescued from under the rubble. John, back in the studio, I believe you want to turn your mic on. You've got something to add. Please do.
Yeah.
Turn your mic on.
How about now?
Well, listen, you only operate the sound. You might as well sound like you know what you're doing.
No. We talk about the lives that were lost that day, but we don't always talk about the impact on the responders and some of the trauma that they went through, both mentally and physically, and the illnesses that they suffered, and what a fight that was, just trying to get them some benefits for that. So I think that's we sometimes forget about that, and that was it.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, Jim. Let me go to you. What was racing through your mind, Jim? And then we'll go to Pip on this as well. When news was breaking about what was happening, and what was your reaction to everything?
I'm sure, like most people, when I first saw the first plane, I thought it was an accident and terrified that number of people that were going to die from that. But then after the second one, and then you heard about the Pentagon, and you heard about the plane in Pennsylvania that heroes forced those planes down, kind of gave you chills and goosebumps all over your body. But that was my first reaction. But can I bring up just a couple of things? And
yeah, sure. Yep.
One was, is that a national day of flying the flag at half mast? Does anybody know?
As part of the commemoration?
Yes.
To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe there's anything federally mandated, but we could verify that.
If it's not, I don't know who has the power to do that, but if there's any reason to flag at half-mast, that certainly has to be one of the top priorities. And the second thing is in professional sports, I'm an avid Yankee fan, and two things happen there. If you watch their games on the seventh inning stretch, they sing the Star Spangled Banner religiously. I don't know if we could some way get the word out to all sporting events to have a moment of silence or something like that on 9/11. And then the last thing is, I saw something that kind of touched my heart. It had to do with Derek Jeter of the New York Yankees, and a small young man went up and asked him for his autograph. And he said, "You were my hero." And Derek Jeter said, "Son, you don't want my autograph. Go get it from one of the policemen or the fire departments. They're the real heroes." So just little things like that make a difference.
Absolutely, and I remember that conversation. Let me address the second point that you brought up. Usually on the 9/11 or in and around there, what has happened in the past in the other sports, they usually will hold a moment of silence in and around the singing of the Star Spangled Banner to start, especially in football on the Sunday, probably after maybe. They usually have first responders actually hold the flag, the giant flag that's on the field, and then they usually do it there. So there are other sports that do other things. Now, there is another name for the holiday. There is an actual holiday name for September 11th. And this will go into answering your first question about flags at half-mast. Pip, do you know what the holiday is called technically for 9/11?
I do not know the name of the holiday, no.
Frank, how about you, sir?
I do, but I'll let you say it.
All right. John, how about you?
Patriots Day, right?
Very good. That is correct. 9/11 was enacted as Patriots Day, and according to internet, flags are flown at half-staff on September 11th to honor the victims of the terrorist attack. The day is also known as Patriots Day and National Day of Service and Remembrance. So yes, it is a federally supported remembrance because of the flags at half-staff. All right, Pip, how about you that day when news started breaking? What was happening?
Well, I apologize for not knowing that, because the Patriot Act was what followed after 9/11, as we all know. Yeah, I can remember vividly where I was. I was on the 8th floor of the bank I was working at, and someone called down the hallway and said, "Hey, a plane just hit the World Trade Center." And so we all ran into the boardroom and cut the TV on. And like everybody else, they didn't think of terrorist attack at that time. But we were standing there and watching the whole thing. And then when the second plane hit the World Trade Center, I could just see everybody in that room sort of freeze. And we knew at that point that this wasn't an accident. This was an intentional terrorist act. So we could feel for the people that were there, but we weren't there. We didn't experience it as Frank did, and my heart's out to him, because remembering that day, even just watching it to me is very important from this point forward. It really is. And that's what we do at the Chesapeake service. And I can talk a little bit about that whenever you're ready.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute or two. I want to go to our last break of the show. When we come back, we'll talk a little more detail between Pip and Jim about the actual service here on 9/11. A few more stats, and believe it or not, fellas, the time is almost up. Time flies when you're chatting like you're having a few beers. All right, you're watching Aaron's Hour with Aaron Phillips, coast to coast. I got Jim on the phone. I have Pip, I have Frank, I have John back in the studio, and I have all of you watching. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Edgar Alejandro. I'm the co-founder of Rising Again Productions. So we've been here in Vegas producing films for the past couple of years, and we've seen our fair share of studios. We worked in our fair share of studios, and to be honest, WWDB TV has been our favorite by far. John is so welcoming. The space is wonderful. It's perfect for what we need. We've had rehearsals here. We've had callbacks here. We've had table reads here. So if you're a Vegas creative, or really just a creative coming into Vegas, definitely check out this space. Chat with John. I think you'll find that this studio has everything that you'll need as well.
Are you feeling overwhelmed or stressed? Remember to take a moment for your mental health. At the Mental Health Moment, we believe in the power of self-care and community support. Our mission is to encourage and empower individuals across generations to prioritize their mental well-being. Our program called CARE takes you through community, awareness, resources, and education so we can support you every step of the way. Join us at the Mental Health Moment. Visit our website or follow us on social media because your mental health matters. Remember, take a moment for your mental health.
All right, welcome back to Aaron Zauer. I've got my cast of crew of cronies here. I have Jim Horn on the phone from Chesapeake. I have Richard Pippin. He's also in Chesapeake. I got Frank, my good friend Frank Pizzaro out there in Vegas. John, JPEG Styles pushing the buttons back at the home studio. And I'm just sitting here in Virginia Beach absorbing all the information and knowledge I can from my good friends here. Thank you for joining me, guys, today. I thought, taking the time to honor and help push the reminder, and I hate to say it that way, of 9/11 never being forgotten, I thought was a great way to spend a Saturday. And hopefully people will get that little kick in the pants to never forget and take the time, as we've talked about, to perhaps share their event, the event and where they were, families that have the young ones that weren't around at that time, et cetera. So hopefully this will help start a push for that. Okay. We'll get to some more details about the September 11th event in Chesapeake next week here in a few minutes from both Pip and Jim. Here's some more information that came out post-fact. The week after 9/11, alcohol consumption in Manhattan increased by 25%. Tobacco intake rose by 10%, and church attendance rose by 20%. After the attacks, it took firefighters 100 days to extinguish all the fires around Ground Zero, at least according to this. And then another piece that I'll share, $100 million worth of art was lost in the collapse of the towers, including a memorial piece for the victims of the 93 bombing, as well as paintings from Pablo Picasso. Let's see. While workers were going through the debris, they found some 65,000 items. Nearly 500 watches and 150 wedding rings were among the items that were found post cleanup. Okay, so let's bring it in a little closer to home, Jim and Pip. Let's talk about next Wednesday. Maybe in the future, on a future September 11th, we can get Frank out here and he can do his thing to support our future events and have Frank part of the Remembrance Days out here. So first of all, let's talk about, Frank, you mentioned earlier that steel is used in many locations as memorials from the event. Pip and Jim, whoever wants to answer this, I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting for next week, but I understand we also have a piece of steel from the World Trade Center in Chesapeake City Park that's part of the service, correct?
Yes, we do, and I can answer that for you.
Right.
Actually, that was quite a ceremony. We have a piece of the steel from the World Trade Centers. We also have the section or a piece of the building from the Pentagon, and there's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's something there from Pennsylvania as well, from the crash site. That was brought in by tractor trailer with flags all the way around it, a complete escort by the police from which transferred from state to state. So it was quite a ceremony when that was brought in. When it was brought in, it was laid at Chesapeake City Park. And as you could see in that flyer that you presented there earlier, the steel fence encases that so that it's not messed with during the year. And there's a walkway where people can go up and actually view that. That is correct.
Jim, what go ahead, Jim.
Surrounds that piece of steel is shaped like the Pentagon.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's an interesting fact. What else, Jim, can you share that is planned for Wednesday's Remembrance service?
Well, we're going to have Kiwanis is going to have a tent out there. Then we're going to be providing water and I think we're going to have some sort of like cupcakes or something for people. We have small miniature American flags that we're going to hand out as people come in. and that they can, keep and take with them. We have the flag is up. If I'm not mistaken, the flag is held up by a couple of fire engines. They're way high in the sky. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do this year, but it usually is quite a wonderful ceremony.
Well, it's again, anything that is done to to honor the lives and the fallen that day, and those who have perished since because of illnesses. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the illness side, but and I'll do something here in a moment. When the National Guard went after Flight 93, the two pilots who took to the air did not have time to properly arm their jets. The pilots knew that if they intercepted a hijacked plane, they would have to fly their jets into the aircraft with no guarantee of their own ejection. In other words, these brave pilots basically went on a suicide mission. The employee who gave the order to ground all planes that day, because if you remember, planes were ground for 3 days, if I'm not mistaken, was the timetable. Nothing was up in the air except government planes for safety and security. But the employee who gave the order to ground all planes after the horrible attacks was a gentleman by the name of Ben Sliney, Sliney, and it was his first day on the job.
Oh, my God.
How about that for a first day, huh? Canada, I would have asked for extra time off after that. That's for darn sure. Canada took in 255 diverted planes from the United States that day. And of course, the Canadians took care of our stranded passengers by feeding them and such. Over 100 search and rescue dogs were deployed to help find survivors in the rubble of the towers. And of course, all of this is being done as a reminder of the events that unfolded and why something like this can never happen again. $5 billion was the cost for debris removal, $14 billion for reconstruction in that area. $3 billion in overtime payroll was paid to uniformed workers. And last but not least, over $1 billion was paid for replacing destroyed equipment and vehicles. And Frank, you're the right one to verify this. I saw in that same article that for one fire truck, the cost is about $500,000. Does that sound about right?
It's actually more.
It's more now. So when you're spending $1 billion and it's costing more than $500,000 for one fire truck, the numbers are just staggering for sure. And when I walked out of the the Oculus, which is now the mall of stores of where the train comes in under what used to be Penn Station, you walk out on the one side, and there is engine company, I want to say number 10, if I'm not mistaken. I took a picture of it and showed it a couple of weeks ago. When we walked out and we started walking to the fountains, I said to my wife, I said, what I really will want to do when we're done is I want to go across the street and maybe chat with them, maybe do a little interview with somebody. But I can't imagine, Frank, you said normally your firehouse was about a 30-minute drive to the site, and that day, for whatever the reason, took you there a lot quicker. But this firehouse, folks, was right across the street. Stand outside your front door and look right across the street to your neighbor's door. That's how close firehouse or engine house number 10 was to the World Trade Center event. I can't imagine what they must have felt, the ground shaking with the explosions, the debris. They're right there. And unfortunately, by the time we walked around the parks and got around the other side, we're on the back side of everything, and I never made it back around. Side note, though, if anybody does plan on traveling to the World Trade Center Memorial, they have a beautiful museum there, but don't go on Tuesdays. The museum is closed on Tuesdays. And the day I was there was a Tuesday, and I never went inside. So mark that down, though, but go any other day of the week. Just don't go on a Tuesday if you want to go inside to the museum. And those who have gone and want to see it and check it out, I'm just going to say this. That's a small little sample. I shouldn't say small, but that's a sample of the big time plans that Mr. Frank Pizzaro has and what he wants to do to honor the fallen through fire memorial transport and have a museum to 9/11 and firefighters and servicemen and police and EMT. So I'm giving you all just a little bit of a a snippet idea of what the big time plans down the line, and hopefully not too far down the line, because if you donate, it will certainly help bring things closer. That's something he wants to do, plus the whole theater and the whole big thing. And I don't know, some guy, maybe The Voice may be involved in something like that and helping. I don't know, some guy. Anyway, all right, let's talk about, guys, we're actually just about out of time. So let's put a neat little bow on this. Jim, I'm going to give you the floor first. Let's put a bow around September 11th, what we need to do to keep it close to our hearts. And don't worry about talking about the event for us. I will do that at the close. But talk about what we as a nation need to do to, quote unquote, never forget.
Well, first of all, let me talk about the 6,000 people who are still suffering from the remnants of being around the World Trade Center when it was, to my knowledge, or maybe Aaron, you can answer this for me. Are there any programs still available? And I know it's been a long time, but are there any programs available to remember those people? And is there any fundraisers or anything like that to help them?
I'll actually defer to Frank on that one. Frank, do you have information on that, perhaps?
It's just the one that I know of is the Victims Compensation Fund. That's the one that's currently active. I don't know of the others, but this is the one that's in
called again?
The Victims Compensation Fund.
Okay.
Wasn't that set up federally?
Correct. It was.
Yeah, we had to beat the crap out of Congress to get it too.
Right. They had to fight to get those, to get it actually
Set up
and locked in.
Okay. So Jim, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I can do some more research on that. Other than that, I think, in my opinion, we're starting to realize, or more people are starting to come to the fact that this is an event that's being less and less on people's minds all the time. And in some respects, that's good, but in other respects, we need to make sure that people are aware that it come out one time a year and give thanks to the services that they provided.
And with what you said before, I think we really need to see who we need to talk to about making 9/11 a national holiday. And I think once you make it a national holiday, then people can't forget.
That's a great.
From what I understand, it's not being mentioned very much in the schools for whatever reasons. But if at least if their flags are at half mast and it is a national holiday, then kids at least will ask the question, well, why are we getting off today? Or why is this a national holiday? And then people will have a chance to explain.
I don't want to, I'm not trying to make a comparison of one situation to another, but I am going to make a comparison from the standpoint of repetition. During the holiday times, we always talk about, and we certainly in Kiwanis, we do this, food baskets to those who need, the homeless. Let's do a turkey basket. Let's invite them. It's almost as if we're saying people are hungry only one time a year around the holidays. No, people are hungry 365 days out of the year, and we should try to remember to help everybody every day of the year. Well, 9/11 remembrance is sort of the same thing. We always remember in and around 9/11, but when we get away from 9/11, we tend to forget. We should be honoring and remembering not just everybody from 9/11, okay? There's police officers fallen, firefighters, EMT, military, every day of the week, every day of the calendar year for years and years to come and past. We should remember every day, not just in and around. Maybe September 11th is a pinnacle day to remember everybody, but we should really be remembering every day, because every day somebody is dying, just like somebody is hungry. Okay, before I want to close out with Frank for a reason. Pip, you actually have some more details about the ceremony, and then we'll wrap up with Frank, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay, yeah, on the ceremony in Chesapeake, it lasts for 1 hour. There are bells, as I think with most ceremonies. As you can see, we will have the military there. The mayor, Dr. Rick West, will probably do the introductions. Our speaker is going to be Sheriff Jim O'Sullivan this year. We will open by singing the national anthem, and at the end of the ceremony, we will have the silence of the bells, and then we will have the taps, both in front and in the background, and that's how we end that ceremony. So it's a very moving ceremony. We just hope we have more people out there.
Well, I am anticipating we will, because again, I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but I've been doing what I do best. I've been sharing it not only on the show, but I've been all over social media, anybody that I can talk to about it. I know Jim and the guys have been handing out flyers all over the area to get people out there. I don't know what the attendance was last year for this, if anybody ever took an official head count, but in my mind, if we get at least one more, then our job is done. If we get 10 more, then we're 10 times to the good. So let's just use what happened in the past. We can't change. We got a clean slate this year. Whatever today's number is for next week, whoever shows up, that's where we start. Frank, I'd like to give you the final word as we say goodbye on September 11th. Honoring, remembering. Share a few minutes of your thoughts as we get ready to say goodbye for this week's episode of Aaron's Hour.
Well, we got to remember we lost 2,977 that day. 343 were New York City firefighters. Since then, over that amount have died from 9/11 related illnesses, and people are dying every day. And so what I want to say is that we remember our veterans and our firefighters and our police officers and our civil servants, and remember them always and honor them always, and remember that freedom is not free, and some have paid the ultimate price. As they say, all gave some, but some gave all.
Well said. Well said. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, you have a moment where you have a mic drop, and that's just about it. I want to thank Jim Horn, who's on the horn with us here from Virginia area. Mr. Richard Pippin is there, and of course Frank Pizzaro, good friends and brothers in arms in helping our community. I am Aaron Phillips. I just want to remind everybody: be kind to everybody. Why? We are all we have. We'll see you next week when special guest Richard Morris from the Virginia Beach Kiwanis Club. Not talking about Kiwanis. This guy is a serial entrepreneur, and you'll hear a lot about what he's got going on, and we'll go from there. Have a great week, everybody. Please remember to be safe, and please get out there and support 9/11 events in your community. If you see a service officer, say hello and thank you. First responder, the same thing. They're there when we need them, and we sometimes forget that. Have a great week, everybody, from Aaron's Hour. Thank you for watching. Be safe, be happy, and always be wealthy and kind. Take care, everybody.